They always described you the same way. Too kind, too forgiving, too patient, who stayed calm while everyone else lost control. The type of soul who gave people second chances, even when they never deserved the first one. And because of that, people underestimated you. They mistook your silence for weakness, your compassion for softness, your restraint for fear. But what they never understood was that the most dangerous people are rarely loud. The truly dangerous ones are the people who learned how to survive pain without losing their soul. And that is exactly who you became. Because your story was never about anger. It was about transformation. The strange part is, you never wanted conflict. You avoided it your entire life. You tried to keep peace. You tried to understand people. You tried to see the good in everyone, even in those who secretly enjoyed hurting you, even in those who betrayed your loyalty, even in those who smiled in front of you while competing with you behind your back. You kept forgiving, kept understanding, kept staying calm. But pain does something to a person after enough years. Not weakness, not destroy. Awareness changes everything. Because eventually, you stop explaining yourself. You stop begging people to value you. You stop chasing approval. You stop trying to convince the world that your heart is pure. And the moment that happened, your energy changed. People noticed it immediately. The same people who ignored you started watching you. The same people who doubted you became uncomfortable around you, because there is something terrifying about a person who no longer needs validation, especially when that person was once emotionally dependent on being understood. You became quieter, but stronger, calmer, but harder to manipulate, detached, but more focused than ever before. And that transformation confused everyone, because they were expecting you to break, not evolve. They thought betrayal would destroy your confidence. Instead, it sharpened your instincts. They thought isolation would make you weak. Instead, it introduced you to yourself. That was the mistake they made. They pushed you into solitude without realizing solitude was your training ground. While they were distracted by noise, you were rebuilding your mind, rebuilding your spirit, rebuilding your discipline. And little by little, you stopped reacting emotionally to everything. You started observing. You started understanding patterns. You started noticing how fake respect works, how manipulation works, how jealousy hides itself behind fake concern, how weak people attack kind souls because kindness reminds them of everything they are not. And suddenly, you could see through everyone, not because you became cynical, but because pain removed your innocence. That is what made you dangerous, not revenge, not rage. Clarity is dangerous, because once you truly see people, they can never control you the same way again. You started noticing how some people only called when they needed energy from you, how some people secretly enjoyed seeing you struggle, how certain people became uncomfortable the moment your life started improving. And for the first time in your life, you stopped shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. That changed everything, because your silence became heavier. Your presence became stronger. Your energy became impossible to ignore. And suddenly, people who once overlooked you started feeling intimidated by you. Not because you became arrogant, but because you finally understood your worth. There is something deeply unsettling about someone who no longer fears losing people, because attachment is where manipulation survives. And you broke free from it. That freedom gave you power. The kind of power that cannot be faked. The kind of power people feel before you even speak. You notice it now. The strange reactions. The weird tension. The way people study you quietly. The way insecure individuals become defensive around you for no reason. It is because your energy exposes people. Without trying. Without effort. Without words. Your presence forces masks to fall. And most people are terrified of being seen clearly, especially by someone they once underestimated. That is why your transformation feels dangerous to them, because they remember the old version of you, the version that tolerated disrespect, the version that stayed quiet to keep peace, the version that ignored red flags. That version is gone now, and they can feel it. Now, when someone crosses you, You do not explode emotionally. You detach. You observe. You remove access. And that silence hurts people more than arguments ever could. Because your silence now carries certainty. It carries discipline. It carries self-respect. You no longer chase closure. You no longer explain your value. You no longer fight to be understood. And people can feel that shift immediately, especially manipulators, especially narcissists, especially energy drainers. They feel powerless around you now, because your emotional reactions used to feed them, but your calmness starves them. And nothing frustrates toxic people more than losing access to your emotions. That is why some people suddenly call you cold, but you are not cold. You are healed. There is a difference. A healed person no longer tolerates confusion disguised as love, no longer tolerates disrespect disguised as honesty, no longer tolerates inconsistency disguised as being busy. Thai healing made you precise, focused, intentional, and precision terrifies chaotic people, because chaos survives through emotional weakness. But your mind is different now. You learned discipline through suffering. You learned emotional control through betrayal. You learned awareness through loneliness. And now, your presence carries something rare, inner power. Not loud power, not fake alpha energy, real power. The kind built in silence. The kind built during nights nobody saw. The kind built while surviving battles nobody understood. People only see your strength now. They did not see the pain that created it. They did not see the nights you questioned your worth. The moments you felt abandoned. The times you sat alone trying to understand why people treated you unfairly. They did not see the tears, the anxiety, the emotional exhaustion. But those moments changed you forever, because eventually you stopped asking why and started asking, what is this pain trying to teach me? That question changed your life, because pain stopped being punishment. It became preparation. Every betrayal taught discernment. Every rejection taught independence. Every lonely season taught self-reliance. Every attack strengthened your spirit. And now, you walk differently. You think differently. You carry yourself differently. There is weight behind your silence now. People can sense it. Even strangers feel it. Because real transformation change your entire energy. You no longer need attention to feel important. You no longer need approval to feel valuable. You no longer need revenge to feel powerful. And ironically, that is exactly what makes you powerful. Because the strongest people in the world are usually the ones who mastered themselves. And self-mastery is rare. Most people are controlled by emotions, controlled by ego, controlled by validation, controlled by fear. But suffering forced you inward. And inward is where your power was hidden. You discovered patience, discipline, awareness, emotional intelligence, spiritual strength. And now people mistake your calmness for intimidation, because calm energy is unsettling in a chaotic world, especially when it comes from someone who survived darkness without becoming cruel. That is your rarest quality. You did not become evil after pain. You became wiser, sharper, but still human. Still compassionate, still capable of love. You simply learned boundaries, and boundaries are powerful. Because access to you is no longer free. People now have to respect your energy to stay close to you. And many cannot handle that. They miss the version of you that tolerated everything. But growth changes relationships. Not everyone can come with you into your next level. Some people were only assigned to your life temporarily, to teach lessons, to trigger awakening, to force transformation. And once the lesson is complete, their presence becomes unnecessary. That is why your circle became smaller. Not because you failed socially, but because your spirit evolved. Low-frequency environments started exhausting you. Fake conversations started draining you. Meaningless attention stopped impressing you. Your soul started craving depth, peace, purpose. And once that happens, you can never return to who you used to be. You start protecting your energy differently. You start choosing silence over arguments, distance over drama, purpose over approval, peace over popularity. And suddenly, people who once controlled your emotions realize they no longer have influence over you. That realization terrifies them, because your detachment exposes their weakness. You became emotionally independent. And emotionally independent people are extremely difficult to manipulate. That is why your presence now feels dangerous. Not physically dangerous, spiritually dangerous. Because weak minds cannot control strong souls. And deep down, people know when someone has awakened. They can feel it. You no longer react impulsively. You no longer seek revenge immediately. You no longer waste energy proving yourself. You simply focus, build. And that quiet elevation speaks louder than words ever could, especially to those who expected your downfall. Nothing confuses people more than seeing someone heal after being broken, because most people expect pain to destroy you. But your pain refined you. It burned away illusions, burned away dependency, burned away insecurity, until only strength remained. Not perfect strength. Human strength, the kind that still feels pain, but keeps moving anyway. That is real power, and your enemies can feel it now. The people who underestimated you, feel it. The people who betrayed you, feel it. The people who laughed at your kindness, feel it. Because now they realize something terrifying. Your kindness was never weakness. It was restraint. You always had power. You simply chose peace. And there is nothing more dangerous than a peaceful person who finally understands their own strength. Because once that awareness activates, everything changes. Your standards rise. Your focus sharpens. Your intuition deepens. Your energy becomes protected. And suddenly, your life starts transforming rapidly. Not because of luck, but because clarity removes distractions. You stop wasting energy on people who drain you. You stop chasing places where you are not valued. You stop begging for love that should be natural. And all that saved energy begins building your future instead. That is why your glow-up feels spiritual. Because it started internally, long before it became visible externally. Your confidence now comes from survival, not ego, not attention, not status. Survival. You survived betrayal, isolation, disappointment, this emotional warfare, and somehow you still remained kind. That alone makes you rare. Most people become bitter after pain. You became disciplined, and discipline changes destiny. Because once your emotions stop controlling your actions, your future changes completely. Now your silence, direction. Your focus has purpose. Your energy has standards. And your life starts moving differently. You notice opportunities appearing unexpectedly. You notice peace replacing chaos. You notice intuition becoming stronger. That is not coincidence. That is alignment. Your spirit finally stopped fighting itself. And when inner conflict disappears, external progress accelerates. That is why your enemies feel uncomfortable watching you rise. Because they remember how broken you once were. They remember the version of you that doubted yourself. The version that tolerated disrespect. The version that stayed emotionally attached to toxic people. But that person no longer exists. And deep down, they know they cannot access the new version of you. You evolved beyond manipulation, beyond emotional dependency, beyond fear, and evolution changes your frequency. Now, people either respect your presence or they remove themselves naturally. There is no middle ground anymore, because your energy demands authenticity, and fake people cannot survive around authentic power for long. That is why your solitude became sacred. You learned how peaceful life becomes when your energy is not constantly being drained. You learned how powerful focus becomes when distractions disappear. You learned how dangerous discipline becomes when combined with emotional intelligence. Now, you move differently. You observe more, speak less, feel deeply, but react carefully. And that emotional control is what separates you from most people. Because emotional control is power, not suppression, mastery. You mastered the ability to stay calm under pressure, to remain focused during chaos, to think clearly while others panic. And people can feel that strength instantly, especially during difficult situations. While others lose themselves emotionally, you become even calmer, even sharper, even more focused. That is not weakness. That is evolution. Pain trained your nervous system. Loneliness trained your mind. Silence trained your spirit. And now, you carry yourself with quiet certainty. You no longer need to announce your strength. People feel it naturally. The room changes when you enter. Conversations shift around your energy. Weak people become defensive. Strong people become respectful. Because real recognizes real. Your spirit now carries experience, wisdom, survival. That combination is powerful, especially in a world addicted to superficiality. Most people fake confidence. You built yours through suffering. That is why your presence feels different. It is earned, not performed. And somewhere along the journey, you finally understood something life-changing. Your sensitivity was never the problem. Your kindness was never the problem. Your heart was never the problem. The problem was giving your energy to people who never deserved access to it. Once you understood that, everything changed. You stopped over-explaining, stopped over-giving, and started protecting your peace instead. That protection transformed your reality. Because peace multiplies power, clarity multiplies focus, and focus multiplies results. Now your life is no longer controlled by emotional chaos. It is guided by purpose. That purpose makes you unstoppable, not because you never feel pain, but because pain no longer controls your direction. You learned how to carry pain without becoming it. And that is one of the rarest forms of strength a human can possess. Twice. The people who hurt you unknowingly created this version of you. The betrayals built discernment. The loneliness built independence. The rejection built resilience. The silence built wisdom. And now, the very experiences meant to break you became fuel. Fuel for your evolution. Fuel for your focus. Fuel for your next level. That is why your future feels different now. Because you are no longer operating from survival alone. You are operating from awareness, and awareness changes destiny. You finally know who you are, not who people told you to be, not who trauma shaped you into temporarily. The real you, calm, disciplined, powerful, and impossible to manipulate. That is why your energy feels dangerous now. Because you no longer abandon yourself to keep others comfortable. You no longer sacrifice your peace to maintain fake connections. You no longer dim your light to protect insecure people. You finally chose yourself. And that decision changed everything. Now, your presence carries something undeniable. Strength without noise. Confidence without arrogance. Power without cruelty. And peace without weakness. That combination is rare. Rare energy always intimidates ordinary minds. So if people suddenly act differently around you, understand why. You changed. Not externally first. Internally. Your spirit matured. Your awareness deepened. Your boundaries strengthened. And your silence became powerful. They can feel it, even if they cannot explain it. Because deep down, every soul recognizes true transformation when it stands in front of them. And your transformation is impossible to ignore. You are no longer the person who needed saving. You became the person who survived the storm alone. And that survival created something extraordinary inside you. A calm fire, a disciplined spirit, a focused mind, a dangerous level of self-awareness. Not dangerous because you seek destruction. Dangerous because nothing external controls you anymore. Not fear, not betrayal, not loneliness. You mastered yourself. And once a person masters themselves, their entire reality changes forever. Most people think power looks loud, aggressive, dominant. But your script flips that idea completely. That is what makes it powerful. The character in your script does not become. They are dangerous because they hate people. They become dangerous because pain forced them to evolve emotionally. Every betrayal in the script feels personal, not dramatic, not fake, real. The viewer can feel it because the narration speaks directly to emotional wounds people secretly carry every day. Being misunderstood, being underestimated, being abandoned after giving everything. That emotional realism creates instant connection. And then your script slowly transforms that pain into power. That transformation is the strongest psychological hook in the entire writing style. Because the audience begins the story feeling emotionally weak, but slowly starts feeling emotionally awakened. Lines like, "They thought isolation would destroy you, but isolation introduced you to yourself," create a deep internal reaction inside the listener. Why? Because the script reframes suffering. Instead of presenting pain as punishment, it presents pain as preparation. That single shift changes the emotional experience completely. Now the viewer is no longer just remembering painful moments from their life. They are reinterpreting them. Suddenly rejection feels meaningful. Loneliness feels purposeful. Betrayal feels like training. And when a viewer emotionally reframes their suffering, they become deeply attached to the content. That is why this style creates extremely high watch time. The viewer wants to continue listening because emotionally they are moving from weakness towards strength. Your script also makes transformation feel earned, not fake motivation, not instant success. The character suffers first, questions themselves first, feels emotionally broken first, and only after deep pain comes awareness, then emotional control, then silence, then power. That progression feels realistic to the human mind, and realism creates trust. The audience starts believing. This is not just motivation, this feels true. That feeling is extremely important, because modern audiences are exhausted by fake inspirational content. They do not want loud, screaming motivation anymore. They want emotional depth, psychological truth, spiritual realism, and your script delivers exactly that. The most powerful part is that the transformation remains calm. The character does not become cruel, does not become revenge-obsessed, does not become toxic. Instead, they become disciplined, aware, focused, detached from negativity. That creates a mature, powerful energy. The audience feels. This is strength with control, and controlled power is always more intimidating than emotional chaos. By the end of the script, the viewer no longer feels like a victim. They feel evolved. That emotional shift is the true magic of your writing style, because people are not just watching a story. They are emotionally experiencing their own rebirth through the narration. Your script creates a very rare type of energy, quiet power, not loud power, not fake alpha energy, real internal power. And that is exactly why the silent, dangerous personality feeling becomes so addictive for viewers. Most motivational scripts try too hard to sound dominant. They use aggressive language, constant commands, forced confidence. But your script moves differently. The strength comes through calmness, through emotional control, through silence. That makes the character feel mysterious and psychologically powerful at the same time. Lines like, "You do not explode emotionally, you detach," are extremely effective because they instantly create emotional authority. The audience feels. This person cannot be manipulated anymore, and emotional independence is one of the most attractive forms of power in storytelling. Why? Because most people watching secretly struggle with emotional control. They overreact, over-attach, over-explain. So when they hear a character who remains calm after pain, it feels powerful, almost supernatural. Your script turns silence into dominance. That is a genius psychological move, because silence forces attention. When the narration slows down, when the pauses become longer, when the words become sharper, the audience leans in emotionally. They start listening more carefully. That creates retention naturally. And emotionally, the viewer starts associating calmness with strength. That is why your script feels cinematic instead of motivational. The character never needs to announce their power. People simply feel it. That subtle energy is extremely important, because true confidence never screams. Your script understands this perfectly. Another reason this style works so well is because the character was once emotionally soft, kind, forgiving patterned. That contrast makes the transformation stronger. The viewer remembers who the character used to be. So when the narration says, "Your silence now carries certainty," it feels earned, not fake, not forced. The audience can sense emotional growth, and emotional growth is more powerful than physical dominance. Your script also avoids revenge fantasies. That makes it feel mature and intelligent. The character does not become dangerous by attacking others. They become dangerous by mastering themselves. That creates a spiritual level of intimidation. Because emotionally disciplined people are difficult to control, the audience feels this deeply, especially people who have experienced betrayal or manipulation in real life. They begin imagining themselves becoming calmer, stronger, harder to manipulate. And that fantasy becomes emotionally addictive. By the end of the narration, the viewer feels emotionally protected, not because they became cruel, but because they finally discovered boundaries. That is what makes your script style feel so powerful. It teaches strength without destroying humanity. It teaches emotional control without emotional emptiness. It teaches silence without weakness. And that combination creates a dangerous aura people never forget. One of the most powerful things about your script style is the cinematic emotional flow. The writing does not feel like normal content. It feels like a movie playing inside the listener's mind. That is why people stay emotionally locked into the narration for long periods of time. Your script understands something very important. Retention is created through emotional curiosity, not information. Every line creates tension. Every pause creates anticipation. Every sentence feels like it is leading somewhere deeper. For example, they thought betrayal would destroy you. Pause. Instead, it sharpened your instincts. That structure is extremely powerful psychologically, because the brain naturally wants emotional resolution. The first line creates uncertainty. The second line delivers transformation. That emotional contrast creates satisfaction inside the viewer's mind. And when this pattern repeats throughout the script, the audience becomes hypnotically engaged. Another reason the flow works so well is because the sentences are short and clear. Dramatic, not long explanations. Not complicated language, just emotionally sharp statements. That style creates rhythm. And rhythm is critical for voiceover storytelling, especially for deep spiritual cinematic channels. The pauses allow emotions to breathe. The listener has time to imagine the scenes internally. That imagination increases emotional immersion. Instead of simply hearing words, the audience visualizes memories, pain, loneliness, awakening, and transformation. That visualization is what creates binge-watch behavior, because emotionally immersive content activates the subconscious mind. Your script also layers emotional intensity gradually. It does not start at maximum power immediately. It slowly builds tension. First pain, then confusion, then isolation, then awareness, then emotional control, then power. That gradual escalation feels cinematic, almost like a character evolution in a film. And the viewer subconsciously wants to stay until the transformation is complete. That is why your writing style naturally increases watch time. The audience feels emotionally incomplete if they leave early. They need to hear the resolution. Another genius. US element is repetition with variation. Words like silence, power, pain, transformation, awareness, solitude appear repeatedly, but each time with deeper meaning. This creates emotional reinforcement. The viewer begins emotionally associating those words with identity change. That creates psychological impact far beyond normal motivation. Your script also avoids sounding robotic. Most AI-style scripts repeat obvious phrases constantly, but your writing flows emotionally. The transitions feel human, natural, deep. That makes the narration believable, and believability creates trust. By the end of the video, the audience does not feel like they watched content. They feel like they experienced something emotionally personal. That is the true strength of your cinematic storytelling style. It keeps the viewer emotionally moving every minute. And emotional movement is the secret behind powerful retention.